Dear human being, beloved soul, I welcome you to my podcast series, Conversations with the Universe. After a near-death experience, my perception of our human existence changed profoundly. I became more sensitive, with all our known senses. I feel more intensely, see people with different eyes, and often take a different perspective on life and our challenges. In my books, I share these altered perspectives and all the knowledge that has flowed through me since my near death and thus record it. For all those who are searching for something more, for the meaning of our existence here on Mother Earth. And it is now a great pleasure for me to share this knowledge with you in this way as a supplement to my books. This season I am dedicating myself to my very first work, the basics of being. I wish you many wonderful insights on your path. Thank you. Love.
Dear human, beloved soul,
you are energy, and this energy is endowed with consciousness. Birth and death are the inhalation and exhalation of life. They are the rhythm of the cosmos in which energies, curious and hungry for experience, move into bodies and leave them again. They are the doors through which consciousness walks, while only one thing changes, your tools of perception. As in my example with the microscope and the magnifying glass, only the strengths of the glasses change, that is, the possibilities of experiencing micro or macrocosm. But all the laws, all the possibilities, all the potential of the cosmos always remain the same. For humans, however, and their inherent energy, only the perception of the laws, possibilities, and potentials change during this cycle of birth and death. Nothing else. Therefore, the aspect of death, in particular, should not be seen as the end of all being, but at most as the end of this possibility of perception, because immediately after the senses of the human body decay, other tools, and thus completely different possibilities, will present themselves. Death is the birth of a new, different perception. During life, on the other hand, there are endless possibilities for training consciousness. The physical, sensual tools and the forces that are more strongly at work here are perfect aids for shaping consciousness. They do not create it, they shape, expand, move, and transform it. This means that consciousness is always there. Just as energy is always there, so is the consciousness of that energy always there. Just as a child is also already a human being, but is still far from having the skills of an adult, so too the skills of your consciousness are formed over the course of incarnations. Just a few lives ago, you used the tools differently than you do today, because in the course of this cycle, your consciousness learned to act better with the tools of this organism. Thus, life is the unique chance, in this time, in this place, in this society, with the possibilities of human progress and the development of the organism, to experience the tools in a way that was not possible under other circumstances. Now we turn to the subject of birth. An infinite number of factors create the possibility for an energy to enter a body, but the strongest factor, how could it be otherwise, is your free will. You have already experienced how much free will is tied to your power, so it is precisely this power that is crucial to ultimately shape the will. And so it is this power that determines how you go your way through space and time, when you are born, where you go, and where you go. Once the decision has been made, the great waiting begins. It is a waiting for many circumstances, which must all be in harmony due to the law of resonance, so that the miracle of incarnation can happen. And so it is not only the laws of nature and the frequency vibrations of the earth that have to resonate with you. No, it is also crucial whether a suitable pair of parents can be found who resonate with you, because of course this is also an important part of the overall energies that now all determine together when and where you may incarnate. The soul decides to be born. This impulse resonates with the decision of two people to bring a being into the world. Above all, the mother's willpower carries great weight in this process, since her decision for or against the child is existential. Basically, the father is primarily the bearer of earthly additions and, of course, also part of the overall vibration of the parents. But the basic prerequisite and decisive factor for conception is the mother's decision to conceive. Whether this decision is made consciously or unconsciously is actually not important. The energies of the soul communicate with the energy fields of the parents, especially with those of the mother. Her yes gives the energies of the child the starting signal to take the path of incarnation with all the trials and dangers that go with it. Shortly after this mutual decision, the soul is already in the vicinity of the mother. The first parts of the soul, which I will tell you more about in the chapter Pillars of Being, are already slipping into the body when it is still in the embryo stage. Depending on how many parts of the soul incarnate, the soul takes the time of pregnancy to incarnate all parts, piece by piece. The incarnation is complete when the child takes its first breath. Then the last part of the soul slips into the body, and the incarnation is complete. A very big hurdle for souls on this path is fear. This fear can be the reason for the soul to turn back. Then the cycle begins again, and the soul waits for another chance. On the earthly plane, where the laws of time and space apply, this can take thousands of years before all energies resonate so harmoniously and appropriately again. That is why the souls that want to make a difference, accomplish something, or give impulses here on earth are usually those whose will is strong enough to arrive at the right time and in the right place in earthly life, despite all these fears. But there is a high risk for every incarnating energy. This initially consists, as already briefly mentioned, of the descent into the earthly plane being accompanied by an extreme loss of energy. The organism sets the limits that apply to the living being in terms of strength and perception from the moment of birth. The organism is coarse material and therefore vibrates at a completely different, much lower frequency than the soul energy. However, the soul energy descends into the body, and thus it loses immense power. As you have already been able to experience, consciousness is essentially related to power. This means that due to the impurity and the resulting lack of power, consciousness in the body only exists in a foggy and distorted way. If a person does not manage to cleanse themselves energetically and strengthen their physical strength mentally in the course of their life, they also have very little chance of enlivening their consciousness. Then he leaves it to the animal to shape his life. Then the soul is so little aware of itself in this body that it can only experience the earthly animalistic being. And with that, the experience of forgetting the connections. As you have already experienced, the ego is part of the unconscious animal, and this vibrates at a lower frequency. If you are taken up by earthly perceptions, you remain in these low vibrations. The more you identify with this ego, the more the memory of your actual divine nature fades. The more a person lives out the ego, the less the divine spark lives in him. He then chooses low vibrations rather than the high vibrations of divinity. Wars, hurting others, murder, all the cruelties in this world are a strengthening of this low energy. Then man loses awareness of the connection, and with it the ability to love. Then he loses the light. So if you go more and more into darkness, you will get deeper and deeper into the lower levels. There, you will get to know more parts of yourself through the experience of pain, and you will have to ascend the levels step by step. So if you are a parent, then be aware that the child that came or is yet to come into this world through you has carefully chosen you, the place and the time. The sum of an infinite number of laws, factors and forces is the basis for this encounter. You may give life to this being. Don't forget that when your daily routine begins to show disrespect for this precious gift, this little being is placing itself in your care, under your protection. So be aware of how great the task and the gift are, and live this love every day, more and more. The fear of the souls, but also other energetic circumstances, harbor another danger of birth, namely, that not all soul parts arrive congruent with the resonances in the body. It would take another book to discuss this in more detail, but you should know that this can happen and is usually the case when a child decides to leave relatively soon after birth. And now we turn to the subject of death. In the case of death too, it is the soul that decides when, where, and how this should take place. Death is a door through which the soul passes in order to perceive a different frequency level afterwards, without this body and its tools that we possess here on this earth. Our body gives us senses, and these allow us to experience feelings more intensely. Not only suffering and pain, but also love and so much more. You can experience much more intensely in your earthly life and grow faster and higher through these experiences than you would be able to without these senses. Unfortunately, the teachings of our schools are not geared towards adequately conveying to people the magnitude of the responsibility for training their consciousness, and also not how important it is in the course of life to find oneself and to let the creative part work. Forgetting is part of the creative plan and only another possibility of existence, but we are living in a time when the contamination of organisms has progressed so far that people forget themselves, who they are, that they are, where they come from, why they are, and what they really are. This is devastating. Because of this, the soul enters into another great energetic cosmic danger. It may happen that parts of the soul are forgotten and left behind at the moment of death without consciously knowing it. Another risk is the power of our minds, the creative crowning of which is the creation of the ego. As you know, the ego has the least to do with all that we really are. It is not able to become aware of the connection with the All-One. Here, the one excludes the other. The ego is the self-awareness of the animal that experiences itself as an individual, and from this perspective it is impossible to perceive the energy connections. Something that experiences itself as unique and exclusive cannot simultaneously experience the All-One and its connecting power. We are the creators of cosmic impulses and thereby create our own vibrational fields. The ego within us is also exclusively an energetic product of our own power. If the part we have created ourselves reaches a certain size or mass, the following can happen in the dying process. If a person has concentrated all his attention on the perception of the gross things we experience throughout his life, he is blind to the spiritual subtle connections. He has not become aware of them. This blindness to the actual whole in you can now mean in the state of transition that the vibrational field of the ego splits off from all other soul parts, which I will discuss in more detail later. A new self-aware part that has become so powerful that it has developed its own consciousness runs the risk of clinging to the physical matter that has been experienced as real so far during the dying process via many energetic chains and attachments, to hold on to the previous perception, to hold on to possessions or experiences, to unresolved feelings such as hatred, anger, or even emotional entanglements. Thoughts are real, and the more they are fed with emotions and power, the stronger they become. And since energy never disappears, they naturally also have an effect outside of your body when it no longer exists. Then a vicious circle begins. The part of the former ego that is attached to matter remains trapped on the earthly plane until all energy pathways of the attached feelings and thoughts are released. This attached energy can remain stuck in an intermediate world for an infinitely long time until it decides to incarnate again. This part knows that its actual home is somewhere else and therefore begins to search for the other soul parts. These soul parts, in turn, also begin to search for the lost part. The most difficult thing on this journey for the part left behind will be, above all, that its unconsciousness continues to be a big part of its existence. The energy created and split off from the ego is not suddenly aware of its origin, its creator, and aware of its plight. Therefore, this process continues to take place exclusively unconsciously, which does not make the path of finding back to oneself any easier. These are very bad conditions that certainly do not make the life of such a wandering being any easier. Don't be afraid to recognize parts of yourself that are not only positive, friendly, and loving. These aspects are also a part of you and want to be accepted and considered. Only when you have recognized and accepted them all can you transform them with your consciousness. Without looking at them, this is not possible. Furthermore, it may happen that the ego energy that was split off earlier combines with other lost energies that have been left behind in order to create another new energy field that is large enough to incarnate. This energy is not aware of itself, completely confused and scattered, because it is a mix of many such small, lost energies. Quantum physicists of our time would now explain that the electrons, which actually belonged to a different energy field, are looking for a new energy field with other, forgotten electrons. And there, a new field of consciousness arises. We often find such energies in connection with illnesses such as schizophrenia, borderline syndrome, or other mental illnesses. People with these illnesses are usually such a mix of lost soul parts that are completely scattered and searching for a home, yet trapped in an organism. For these beings, too, it is important to recognize what belongs to whom or not. And even if you don't get a specific answer, just the fact of realizing that you can consist of different soul fragments helps you to accept this fact and to let go of it and transform it accordingly. If this realization is present in the consciousness of the forgotten soul part and it knows that it has another home, then it will find it, sooner or later. Find yourself with all that you are as quickly as you can. The danger of such a fragmentation of your energy is omnipresent and greater than ever communicated. There is no going back on the timeline. What you have lost takes a long time to find you again. And above all, cosmic and energetic circumstances are required for this to happen, all of which must fit together for you to become one again. On this journey, you can lose an infinite amount of time that you could have spent differently, more meaningfully, more richly in fulfillment, and more beautifully in effect. Be aware that every person is exposed to these dangers as long as they do not know exactly who they really are. But this is avoidable and not that difficult. Become whole, know yourself, and you will never forget a part of yourself in a state of transition. This moment of transition is of great importance. There will come a moment for each of us when everything you have done, felt, or thought will mean a snapshot of energy within you, which you then are. You are always the sum of all your decisions, thoughts, and feelings, but above all, you are that at the moment of death. And then this sum of all your feelings, actions, and thoughts is crucial for your progress. How you think, what you feel, how consciously you perceive will determine in the transition where you go. The more open your heart is, the more consciously your perception has been trained in the course of your life, the faster, more concentrated, and without fears, you can step over this threshold. Above all, I would like to point out that you can prepare yourself optimally for the day of the transition throughout your life, every day, every second, by expanding your consciousness. And at the same time, you are doing yourself and your original intention a great favor in all of this. You are learning. Everything about and in you is allowed to learn, not just the ego. If you are always aware of who you are and what you want, every step you take will be conscious and therefore gratifying for you. This feeling of happiness will fill you and open your heart even further. This opening in turn will make you perceive even more beauty and thus let you experience your life and people even more consciously. Then life is a game that lets you fly higher and higher, and even if you should ever stumble, nothing and no one can take this feeling of happiness away from you. In concrete terms, it is about the frequency of your heart, and by extension, the frequency of your entire being experiencing this moment as highly and lightly, happily and consciously as possible. If a person is not aware of their life and their true potential, they are pushed from one state to the next by life, and that costs them an infinite amount of strength. The vicious circle of despair begins, in which the only thing that helps, opening the heart, seems increasingly impossible and difficult. But it is the key. I remind you of the gate of all being, the heart. If the heart is closed, perception is also closed, and to die with a foggy, closed perception simply means that other circumstances have to steer this moment. Once again, it is up to your free will and the strength of your heart, and you should not leave dying to the circumstances or laws that determine you if you do not do it yourself. Even and especially in the transition process, your free will and the power of your consciousness are crucial for your next step. The oblivion is all-encompassing, and so it may happen that you have completely forgotten everything about who you really are and where you really come from. This state is referred to in the Bible as purgatory. It also defines another energetic state that I would like to draw attention to in this context, the Day of Judgment. This is a very important and interesting point in the process of dying and becoming. The so-called Last Judgment is the question to our conscience. Through the impurity in the matter, the consciousness experiences a deceleration. In this process, the energy dips into lower vibrating frequencies. During its stay in dense matter, however, further possibilities for impurity present themselves, and the energy is called upon to decide whether to allow this. Every decision ultimately reshapes the frequency of your energy. If you are aware of this, you can correct this frequency again during your stay in matter by balancing it. But if you are not aware of this opportunity, you will miss this form of cleansing, and then the following happens. Leaving the body means diving into a different perception again. At the same time, the energy dives back into the first energy world, which vibrates somewhat more finely or higher, which I will discuss in more detail in the chapter, The Energy Worlds. This change in frequency and the associated change in perception suddenly make you perceive everything you have experienced so far differently. Specifically, this means that in this state, you become aware of the contamination of consciousness. However, and this is crucial in this case, it is no longer possible to correct this contamination of consciousness. What we call conscience here is as present there as our breathing is now. It feels like a conscience, but in reality it is the immersion in the finer energies and the associated changes in perception. The organism can only exist in a low vibrating level. Thus, the organism is the main cause of the fogging, the contamination, the forgetting of consciousness. If the organism now disappears, all energies are perceived differently. The connection with everything is suddenly perceived more clearly again, felt much more strongly. If a person has never lived, felt, or experienced this connection in their entire life, this threshold acts as an opening of the heart which is not experienced slowly and in the body, but suddenly overtakes you, like a sudden thunderstorm, a sudden storm of energy. Everything you have experienced, done and felt during your stay on Mother Earth will then be reflected upon with this connection and the different perception that goes with it. This is where conscience resides, and this is where everyone judges themselves and their actions. Without filters, without bodies, without confusion, and without contamination of perception, all unbalanced actions then become new tasks for the next incarnation. There the soul decides how the journey continues, depending on the degree of unbalanced actions and the urgency of the balance. There is no escaping this, therefore, internalize above all how important every day and every decision in your life is for the balance. Only here, only now, can you correct all that you want to correct. It is mainly the lower feelings such as hatred, anger, revenge, and lies that need to be balanced, but promises too. If your thoughts, your feelings, and your entire life experience are filled with gratitude and love for all life, you will quickly find your way home and enable your soul to reach even higher vibrational levels. So let me summarize. Awareness can only grow in earthly experience. The body is the tool. The laws of resonance are the raw materials, and together they offer you incredible potential for transforming your power and with it, your awareness. Only here, only in the earthly. The more aware you become of yourself and everything you are in your life, the easier it will be for you to find your way home. Your soul knows, but if you do not perceive it and its signals because you have never practiced it, then the journey becomes a wandering. Therefore, take advantage of life and its countless opportunities for awareness in order to be alert enough to take the right path at the decisive moment of transition. And then the great gift of life is to be able to reach a new level after life. The descent into the dense forms of matter is the condition for the ascent outside of coarse material matter to succeed. Your soul sends a part of itself into matter in order to expand as a whole. The experiences you have are its experiences, but the more aware you are of the connection between the two, the more this part of you can grow in the subtle. In this sense, thank you very much for listening.
Carpe Vitam. Thank you very much for listening, and I would like to remind you to join our community Spine. We are a community that wants to help you live a healthier life, practice your spirituality, and expand your consciousness. We help you find and connect with healers around the world, and we help you give your life a new meaning in different ways. We are Spine, connections that help.